Welcome to Talk to Brazil with Tom Reaoch, the business connector to business in Brazil. Welcome to Talk to Brazil, the Business Connection, a leading Brazil business podcast talking about business in the world. I'm Tom Reaoch, an American from Pittsburgh, living in Brazil, known for business networking, and talking from my podcast studio in Campinas, São Paulo, Brazil. Today's guest is Renan Bandeira, and he's talking with us from Fortaleza, Ceara, here in Brazil. Renan Bandeira is a Brazilian. He's a graduate of the Federal University of Ceara in computer science, finished a master's degree in computer software engineering in 2018. In 2012, he was an exchange student at the Universidad de Salamanca in Spain, and in 2014, a volunteer experience in social service at CMF International in Mexico. There he met new people and tried to change students' minds, making them think about their future. Renan was highlighted in a recent newspaper article about Brazilians working internationally without leaving Brazil. After reading the article, I immediately invited Renan to connect on LinkedIn. So with that, Renan, welcome to Talk to Brazil, the Business Connection.
Thank you, Tom. I'm very happy to be here, and I hope we have a great talk here.
I'm sure we will. Renan, I saw that when you were in Mexico talking to students, did you ever think that one day you would be sitting in Fortaleza and working for a company in Orlando and now for another company in New York?
To be honest, Tom, I didn't think about it. I knew that I already had the opportunity to work outside Brazil when I was an exchange student. I was an intern there in Spain, and I knew that I wasn't a bad professional, and I could, be a better professional if I could have more experience. And when I got back to Brazil, I realized that I can work from home and get some remote jobs since I already have Spanish, English, and English language as well.
Well, so there, I guess the point is it's good to get out of Brazil to take a look at what Brazil's all about. Can you see Brazil better from being outside?
Yeah, people, sometimes we underestimate ourselves because we always think that United States or Europe or any other part of the world is better than us. But I see our universities, our education very highlighted when we are comparing to different universities around the world. We have, for example, the public universities that try to provide some kind of different qualities from you. Like, for example, they gave you hard work and you need to find a way to solve them. Mm-hmm. You don't have anything like you have everything to solve and you just join the puzzle, So I think this is a big difference from different universities around the world.
Well, I like your example of a puzzle because I believe that you have to find the pieces. A puzzle is only complete after you get all the little pieces together. And sometimes it's not easy to find the pieces.
Yeah, in the university, for example, here in Ceara, we had so many programs of mentorship and people, like different students helping other students and different ways of researching by ourselves with the help of some professors. So I think this kind of helped me to try to help other people and learn about soft skills as well. So, for example, I could think about the different people in different situations that they might have in their lives, and I could help them to teach them while they didn't have time to learn or study for a different task they had in the college.
Well, when you went to Spain as an exchange student, you had some time at a university in Spain. How can you compare Spanish education to Brazilian education from what you just said?
I think the main impact I had there is that they just had one test per semester. So we just had a big test in the end of the semester. And sometimes people chilled a little bit, so since they didn't have a test, they didn't want to study that much during all the semester. And here in Brazil, we have so many tests and works to do in universities that we already had to learn all around the semester.
So here too, you're saying you have the time in class, but you also have a lot of time, working time outside of class.
Yeah, that's correct. For example, here in the University of Ceara, we had classes in the morning, in the afternoon, at least in the first 2 years of the college. So it's too much work to do. We don't have too much time to do the tasks and to study outside the classes. So we had to help each other. We had to have the students back to help them in, to make ourselves better. But to be honest, I didn't think I would be a great guy, like working for great companies and working from companies from the U.S. But now I can see that other students that I studied with, they already worked as well with Lenovo and different high companies as well.
Well, that's a point. From my perspective, I know that international companies, American, European, even Asian companies, when they're looking for professionals, and today they're looking everywhere, so that there's no more focal point. If they want to do business in Brazil, obviously they're looking for somebody here. But most businesses are I say that they're planetary. They're not even global anymore because we have people talking about going to Mars. So we have no, seriously, we have to prepare people for, besides global sort of an old concept. But two of the things I've always seen that companies look for, you talked about the soft skills. Part of that comes from leaving your own home or leaving your own country and having an international experience. That's one thing. Second, obviously, are other languages that you might speak, and those are points that you have. But thirdly, and sometimes as important as, is volunteer or community service. Because the interpersonal relationship soft skill is hard to find, it's hard to define. And if a person like yourself doesn't show that you've done that, how can a company see that?
Yeah, that's correct. Exactly, because I see that we as an IT professionals, we don't talk too much to people. We don't have the opportunity to deal with the clients. So when we have different ways of having opportunities to talk to people and help them, and also try to be more empathetic and trying to increase their qualities, I think these opportunities are the best. So that's why volunteer service and other different ways that we can try to help people and also be helped, because when we learn, when we teach, we also learn. And I think this is the main point of volunteering service, because sometimes we think that we're wasting time doing that, but it's not true. Because when we try to do something for somebody else, we can learn. We always learn.
I agree with that. I agree with you there too, that we learn more than we ever teach. But having the view of the world, having the view of other countries, and now you deal with companies throughout the world. You deal with cultures. You're in Brazil. You're sitting in your chair in Fortaleza, but when you connect for what you do as work, if we call that work, you're connecting to people that are multicultural.
Yeah, that's correct. For example, I think that when you learn about different cultures, I've had the contact with American people, Spanish people, Mexican people, German people, and I see all the difference around there, and I learned how to handle these different kind of people. So we start thinking about, it's like if I wasn't Brazilian anymore, if it's like I was in the world, like I'm from the world, I'm not from Brazil, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's why I think this is a great advantage I have in this most, because I can talk to different people around the world, and I can be helpful, and also can be likely gentle, and people will understand me and will like me because I know that their culture, they will identify with me.
Well, good point. But how can you help international people understand Brazilians? because Brazil's a big country. I speak about that constantly here and talk to Brazil, and it's not one thing. For our listeners, Fortaleza, Ceara, is in the northern part of the country. Fortaleza is probably closer to Miami than it is here to São Paulo and Campinas, where I am. And many people, even many Brazilians, just think of Fortaleza and Ceara as a beautiful beach setting, going onto the fantastic dunes, hand gliding and surfing, but not necessarily as a tech hub. What you've just mentioned before about schools, a very high caliber computer science study that you went through, their engineering that you finished as a master's. Fortaleza has a lot more to offer than a beach.
Yeah, that's correct. So Fortaleza, we are a 3 million of people city. We're not, it's like Madrid city people, you know. So it's a huge city. We have a unicorn of education tech here called SAS. It's a platform of education. You have so many different companies here by technology. For example, I worked at Green Mile, which is a logistics system software company that was created here, and now they have a branch there in Orlando because they got international. And we have so many other different examples. So, for example, there is another company called Vitex who created a lab in Quixadá, which is the countryside of Ceará, to get more students to work with them, because people from South are already realizing that here in Fortaleza, in Northeast, especially in Brazil, they can have good professionals with good and competent professionals. So that's why I think Brazilian people are already knowing, especially from South and Southeast, that here in Northeast of Brazil, we have many good professionals. But I think the international people should know that also.
Well, I think that's happening. You mentioned logistics, and from a business standpoint, Fortaleza, is, geographically speaking, is very well located in terms of logistics. So it's the northeastern part of the country, very close, as I mentioned, to the East Coast, to the Caribbean, but obviously the same, very close to Europe. And you're talking of shipping, but now talking of air cargo, the development of the airport, an international hub, not only for passengers, but for cargo. Everything seems to be flying today, right? So proximity and logistics, where you are physically is important because of costs, not only of reaching markets, but taking products and getting them out through the world.
Yeah, so for example, we are having some new cables coming from Europe to provide internet of high speed, because here it's not close to Europe, but in comparison to different cities of Brazil, yeah, it's very close. So that's why the cables are coming from here, coming to here. Also, the airport is being developed so much with different hubs, and now it's hard to, for example, if I want to go to Mexico, I need to go to São Paulo or Brasilia to go to Mexico. So I need to go down and then to go up.
Right.
So I think we have many opportunities to develop ourselves as well.
Right.
But we're in the good path, in the right path, I think.
No, I agree, because even in my professional time here in Brazil, obviously living in Campinas, it was always difficult years ago to get from Campinas to almost anywhere in Brazil. But one of the highlights of Campinas is the airport, the Viracopos Airport, which always has been a cargo airport. But with the companies like Azul Airlines that now reaches over 100 destinations from Campinas, that connection makes business happen, because we can get anywhere. And even though in terms of internet, we can be anywhere, but many times you need to go there physically. And that, if you have to go to Mexico, you have to go to Mexico. And it is difficult to have to come to São Paulo, maybe a 4-hour flight, to take another 8-hour flight back north. And you're really 8 hours of that is just, redundant. But I think very recently, there have been the privatizations of the northern airports. And so that connection, that development, and obviously the development of any airport aids cargo and people. Because the physical, you've seen that in Spain, you've seen that in Mexico, and I know that in Ceara. The personal contact is always important. Brazilians like to see people. Mexicans like to see people. Even Americans like to see people. It can't be online all the time.
Yeah, when you're having conversations, sometimes we miss the gestures and the way people say, and it's always better to speak in presence of the other people, So I think when you're thinking about right now, especially, it's all about time. So if we have different hubs and strategic airports around Brazil that can provide different flights that we can earn time, we will earn money, we will earn life. So that's why, for example, right now, there are a ton of companies that are working from home, providing this forever, not just because of a pandemic. So I think this is all about time.
I see that. I think the future will be balancing both the remote working atmosphere and obviously the face-to-face contact. Because neither one can be 100% all the time. Because sometimes you have to put your feet in the sand. How can you convince somebody that walking on a beach in Ceara is walking on a beach at 5 a.m. if you don't do it?
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you because I think we are social people. We were born to be social. It's our essence of the human being. So if we will work from home and we don't socialize, we will waste this, and we probably can have some health issues as well. So yeah. So for example, we have a channel in Slack here. Slack is a communication tool that we provide to talk to different coworkers. And we have a channel called Where is Chili Piper that people can take pictures of where they are. So people take pictures from snow or having lunch somewhere else or walking on the beach. And I think this is awesome, but people always try to be there,
Right.
Because they need to feel that.
Well, that's a good point. I think that's healthy in many aspects. But I'd like to move on. I'd like to ask you what you can say, not only to Brazilian young people, someone who may be in the university today, but persons in the university anywhere in the world. What are your tips to them to prepare themselves for this new world, this new day in terms of remote working?
I believe they need to grab the opportunities that are there. So they need to, first of all, learn the language, especially English or Spanish. They need to do some volunteer service or some community service to learn how people are and be more empathetic. And they need to look for leadership activities when they are in community service, because they will learn how to handle people as well. And they need to study. They need to look for different opportunities as well, in the sense of getting new knowledge, because in the internet we have tons of information, but you need to filter them. We don't need to be every time in the same social network and looking for something that make them waste their time, but also fun. They need to measure these and balance them.
Well, learning is a never-ending process, I think, anytime, anywhere, for anybody.
Yeah, that's correct. So, for example, I saw an image yesterday that people are comparing the IT guys with doctors and lawyers, saying, hey, the doctors and lawyers got to a college and studied for 5 years, and they are earning half of money that IT guys can earn studying about 12 months. But it's not true. It's not true, because they're not just learning in 12 months, and they won't earn more than a lawyer and a doctor there. They need to have it's like a letter. They need to scale that. They need to keep learning and grabbing the opportunities. They need to identify that they're not that good as they are, but they need to be sure that they can be better than they already are.
I agree with you, but I remember my own time as a student many, many years ago. And back to what you would mention of earning, of money. Obviously, when you get to the bottom line of life, you need to earn to pay your way. And one of the differences, now talking about education, because obviously I born in the States, went to school in the States, have a different perception of learning, and learning there is an ongoing process. But also living is an ongoing process. You become independent as an American, as a student. We became independent sooner than compared to Brazilians, let's say. So I had to earn my way. You had to work to be able to pay for school and go to school and learn and then find a job. And so it was an ongoing process. And both of those processes, obviously I did learn, but also working gave me an opportunity of meeting people, talking to people, relating to people, and learning from people. And at the same time, making more. And it was really through that opportunity that I eventually ended up here in Brazil. So I think it is part. The difference in Brazil is that most students go to school to learn, and then they think about working. So working actually comes later. And what does happen is people get their diploma and not really sure what to do with it, and then try to find a job. And that's a big dilemma today, even in Brazil. We have many people who have a diploma, but are still looking for work.
Yeah, there is a cultural difference between Brazil and the United States that, for example, here in Brazil, we're not used to move to our university cities. We will still live with our parents from being born until we get married. So sometimes this culture sometimes make us accommodated. So we need to try to think that we need to work and look for our goals and not waiting for that to be in our hands, So I think this is the big difference. So for example, I know that in the United States, people who studies in the university, they don't see any problem about working at a restaurant or something as a waiter or waitress. And here in Brazil, there is this cultural impact. So
stigma, yes.
Yeah, so probably there are people who are working as a waiter or waitress. They are working how to handle with other people and how to serve people. And here in Brazil, they don't want that, because they're studying to get a diploma and they want to be like a CEO, a director or something. And they want to start working as a director because they have a diploma. It's not like that. You need to sweat a little bit more.
Well, I think the word that comes out of there is humility, I think, maybe. But I agree with you. Most people think with the diploma and they want to be the CEO sort of like tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And that, I don't want to say that's good, bad, or indifferent, but that's the way it is. But I do want to commend you. We're coming to the end of our time. I want to thank you again for being with me and sharing your story. That article really was exciting for me to see, because obviously even for living here in Brazil, to see that the opportunities, knowing that the opportunities are out there, but the way the article was put together, showing that there is life beyond the borders. And you, as one of the examples, is a prime example for that. So I do want to thank you for sharing your time. What else would you like to tell, not only young people, what would you say to old people?
Yeah, first of all, I thank you, Tom, for the invitation. I think it was a great talk. But what I have to say about the old people as well, for example, the CEOs and directors of different companies, that they need to trust more of Brazilian. They need to trust that they can do more, and they need to give the tools for them to let them make an impact about the company they work. So yeah, they need to help the growth of that people and not being interested all the time.
Do you feel that you're impacting the company you're working for?
Definitely, yeah. It's very different. For example, that I don't need to say how many hours I worked all the day, and I have all the other Brazilian companies I worked. I had to count the time I was working, and even there are some different companies, for example, that installs a software that takes screenshots of the screen to check if the employee is already working. So yeah, it's different, totally different. And when you have trust, you can work with your goals, and you don't need to have to count times because you have your goals and you're mature enough to do that.
Well, those goals are the results, and those results are part of a plan. And if you're going towards a plan, you know what the plan is, right? You take part in the planning.
Yeah, and it's a matter of mindset. It's different because sometimes our bosses, they think that if they're paying us to work 40 hours a week or 44 hours a week, we need to work 44 hours a week. And people don't work 44 hours a week 100% because they need to take a coffee, they need to go to the bathroom.
Kind of walk on the beach. That could be work. You never know. So.
Yeah, and sometimes, for example, for creativity works, they need that. They need to take their mind out sometime.
Right.
And sometimes they get more productive when they don't count times, and they need to think about it.
Well, back to the article, what you did mention in the article is that transparency is greater when you work for an international company. Is that the point?
Yeah, because you feel part of it. So, for example, we have weekly meetings with the CEO and all of the board, and they share their numbers. And it's something that I've never seen in other company I've worked. So it's good to see that you're making an impact in that company and not just saying, hey, you're making an impact. This is a lap in the back. And I don't want that leg in the back. I want to see that I'm making an impact in the company and I'm important there, and the company is really growing, not because people are saying, but because I have the numbers there.
And you feel part of the team.
Exactly. So, for example, we have tons of companies in IT that they share stock options and these kind of stuff. They need to. It's good for us because we feel part of that. So we know that if we work hard, the company will grow and we have some good stocks.
Very good. Well, again, Renan, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing, and success in your planetary engagements now.
Thank you, Tom. I wish you success in your podcast as well. And I hope you can talk soon.
And also, I want to remind our listeners, and thank you for your time. You can find more about Renan Bandeira. And his name is Renan. The last name is Bandeira. Renan Bandeira, and you'll find him on LinkedIn. I'd like to thank you, our audience, and our sponsor, Focus MI Market Intelligence. Focus MI specializes in market research for the Brazilian agricultural market. More about them on their site, which is focusmi.com. Visit our website, talktobrazil.com. Find our previous shows of Talk to Brazil podcasts, which are also available on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Remember, when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Tom Reaoch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.